Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are opening a file that feels, less like a police report and more like a grim piece of American folklore.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But, and this is the key, we aren't here to tell ghost stories. We're here to look at the mechanics of a systemic failure.
That's the perfect way to frame it, because when you look at the source material, the FBI vault records, the original case files from the Bowie County Sheriff, the contemporary reporting from the Texarkana Gazette, you realize this isn't just a whodunit.
No.
It's a snapshot of 1946. It's a story about the limitations of forensics, the chaos of jurisdiction, and how a town can psychologically unravel in real time.
We're talking about the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, the case that gave birth to the moniker the Phantom Killer. And just to set the stage for everyone, we are in the spring of 1946. World War II is over.
Right. And that context is absolutely crucial. You have this, massive release of tension across the country.
Yeah, this collective sigh of relief.
Yeah. Exactly. Soldiers are coming home, the economy is pivoting, and there's this overwhelming desire for normalcy. Texarkana, which, sits right on the border of Texas and Arkansas, is booming. It's supposed to be the era of unlocked doors.
The sanctuary myth.
Yeah.
The idea that everything bad happens somewhere else.
Precisely. The horror was supposed to be over in Europe or the Pacific. The homeland was safe. And then over a period of 10 weeks, that safety is just violently dismantled.
So our mission today is to walk through that 10-week period, but I want to do it differently than the standard recounting. I want to look at the why behind the what.
Okay.
Why did the investigation stall? Why did the eyewitness accounts diverge so wildly? And why does the name Ewell Swinney keep appearing in the files, despite never being convicted of murder?
Swinney is the ghost in the machine here. To understand him, you have to understand the specific forensic void of 1946. But before we even get to the suspect, we have to look at the pattern.
Right.
Because the Phantom didn't start with murder. He started with terror.
Let's go to February 22nd, 1946. This is the first attack. And looking at the details, it's almost a prototype for what comes later. You have Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larey.
A young couple. He's 25, she's 19. It's a late night. A Friday. They've just seen a movie.
Classic date night.
Classic date night. And they park on a secluded road off Richmond Road. Now, we call these lovers' lanes, but socially, these were just the only places young couples could go for a bit of privacy.
And it wasn't like way out in the wilderness, right?
No, not at all. It's about 300 feet from the nearest homes. Isolated, but not, the middle of nowhere.
And the timeline here is tight. They're parked for maybe 10 minutes before a vehicle pulls up behind them.
And this is where the Phantom persona begins to take shape. The attacker gets out, walks up to the driver's side, and shines a flashlight directly into the window.
It's blinding.
Completely. We see this tactic used by law enforcement and by predators decades later. It's instant control. You remove the victim's ability to process the threat visually.
You can't fight what you can't see.
Precisely. Hollis can't see past the dome, but he does catch a glimpse of the face, or rather, the lack of one. The attacker is wearing a white cloth mask.
What kind of mask?
The reports describe it like a pillowcase or a flour sack with eye holes crudely cut out.
Which is infinitely more terrifying than some, professional mask. It implies premeditation, but of a rough, functional sort. This wasn't an impulse.
Not at all. And then the attacker speaks, and his opening line is deceptive. He says, "I don't want to kill you, fellow, so do what I say."
It frames the interaction as a robbery. It gives the victims a false path to survival. Compliance equals safety.
Exactly. A script they think they understand. But then the demands don't match a robbery. He orders them out of the car. He tells Hollis to remove his pants.
I paused on this detail in the notes. Why? Is it humiliation? Or is it tactical?
From a criminology standpoint, it's almost certainly tactical. I mean, think about it. A man with his pants down around his ankles is hobbled.
He can't run.
He can't run. He can't fight effectively. It's a way to neutralize the male threat immediately, and the violence follows instantly. He pistol whips Hollis so hard, it fractures his skull.
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that, Hollis goes down. So the male threat is neutralized. Now he turns his attention to Mary Jean Larey.
And what does he do?
He tells her to run.
That's sadistic. He's making it a chase.
It's a cat and mouse game. He catches her near an old parked car up the road. He accuses her of lying to him, strikes her, and then, and this is a detail the movies always skip, but the police reports are very clear on it, he sexually assaults her with the barrel of the gun.
Oh, man. So it's not about It's an act of dominance and rage, not traditional lust.
Correct. It's about power and inflicting pain and terror. But then the variable he couldn't control happens. Headlights. Another car turns onto the road.
You get spooked.
The attacker panics and flees into the dark.
This brings us to the first major failure point in the investigation. I mean, a huge one. Hollis and Larry survived. They're the only ones who get a look at this guy.
Yeah.
But their stories don't match.
And this discrepancy is devastating, absolutely devastating for the case. Jimmy Hollis, despite the severe head injury, was adamant that the attacker was a white man, tanned, maybe 30 years old.
Okay. A clear description.
A very clear description. But Mary Jean Larry told the police he was a light-skinned African-American man.
That's not a small detail. That's a fundamental demographic shift.
Yeah.
In 1946 Texas, that distinction changes the entire trajectory of the manhunt.
It froze the investigation in its tracks. You have to remember the racial dynamics of the era. The police looked at these conflicting stories and didn't think trauma affects memory.
No, they thought.
They thought these kids are hiding something.
They thought it was a cover-up.
Yeah.
They knew the guy.
Yes. There was a strong suspicion that Larry and Hollis knew the attacker, maybe a jealous ex-boyfriend or some local dispute, and were fabricating the masked man story to protect someone, or just because they were, confused and scared.
So precious time was wasted vetting the victims rather than hunting a predator.
Exactly. They didn't see it as the start of a serial run. They couldn't. To them, it was a messy, violent, singular assault with unreliable witnesses.
Okay, so February turns into March. The town is uneasy. I'm sure rumors are flying, but life goes on. Until March 24th, almost exactly a month later.
4 weeks. The cooling off period. We see this in serial killer psychology so often. The urge is sated, then it builds back up stronger.
This time it's Robeson Road, another lover's lane. And the victims are Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore.
And this time, there are no survivors to give conflicting descriptions. A motorist finds their car the next morning. It's just a horrific scene. Both Richard and Polly Ann were shot in the back of the head.
Execution style.
But the crime scene itself tells a strange and confusing story. They were found inside the car.
Okay. However, there's a massive patch of blood on the ground outside the car, on a blanket they had.
Suggesting they were killed outside and then put back in.
That's the only logical conclusion. Think about the risk involved in that. You've just fired shots in the dead of night. You don't know who heard. But instead of fleeing, the killer takes the time and the considerable physical effort to lift 2 dead bodies and stage them back inside the vehicle.
That speaks to a need for order or maybe a sense of ownership over the victims. It's not just kill and run.
No, it implies he felt comfortable in the dark.
Yeah.
He wasn't panicked. He was in control. Now, Griffin's pockets were turned inside out, which suggested robbery, but the car wasn't taken, valuables were left behind. It feels like the robbery was a prop, a way to confuse the motive.
Or just an afterthought.
Could be.
Yeah.
But here is where we have to talk about the forensic disaster. We are in 1946. There is no CSI unit as we know it. There is no DNA. But even by 1946 standards, this scene was catastrophically mishandled.
The rain played a part, right? I read that it rained that night. Nature did its damage, absolutely. It rained heavily overnight, washing away any potential tire tracks and footprints. You can't blame the sheriff for the weather.
But you can blame them for the crowd control, or lack thereof.
The onlookers. It was a spectacle. By the time the real investigation started, dozens of locals had been walking through the mud, peering into the car, trampling all over the blood evidence.
So any chance of finding the killer's footprints was gone.
Utterly destroyed. The only solid piece of evidence they recovered was a single shell casing, a .32 caliber.
That's our first ballistic signature, a .32 caliber revolver.
It gives them a potential link, but at this point they still aren't 100% sure this is connected to the February attack. The MO is slightly different. Murder versus assault.
But the town knows. You can feel the tension shifting in the newspaper reports. And then the clock resets, just 3 weeks later, April 14th.
The rhythmic nature of it is what started the real panic. It's happening on weekends. It's happening to couples. April 14th involved Paul Martin and Betty Jo Booker. And these victims weren't just random faces in the crowd.
Betty Jo was a popular local kid, right?
She was. She was a star in the high school band, only 15, but she played saxophone in a popular local group. She had just finished a gig at the VFW Hall that night. Paul Martin, who was 16, picked her up to take her home.
They never made it.
They find Paul's body the next morning on North Park Road.
And his injuries were extensive.
Horrific. Shot 4 times. In the nose, the ribs, his hand, and the back of his neck. It was brutal overkill. But Betty Jo isn't there.
She's missing.
For hours she's missing. They find her body later, nearly 2 miles away from Paul's.
This is a significant deviation. He separated them. He took one of them.
It appears he killed Paul, then drove Paul's car with Betty Jo still in it to a second location, killed her there, and then abandoned the car. She was shot twice, in the chest and the face.
I need to address the elephant in the room here. If you ask anyone who's only vaguely familiar with this case, maybe through horror movies, they mention the trombone.
The infamous scene from The Town That Dreaded Sundown.
The movie shows the killer stabbing the female victim with a slide trombone that has a knife attached to the end. It's an iconic image. It's also...
Complete and utter fiction. It never happened.
Betty Jo played the sax.
She played the saxophone. And while her instrument was missing from the scene, it was found months later in the woods, likely just discarded by the killer. It was never, ever used as a weapon. She was shot with the same weapon as the others.
The .32.
The ballistics matched the Griffin and Moore murders, and this is the moment the dam breaks. The police have to go public. They announce it. We are looking for one man, a serial killer.
And the press coins the name, the Phantom Killer.
And that name, it does something to the human psyche, the Phantom. It implies he's everywhere and nowhere. He's not a man, he's a ghoul.
It strips him of his humanity. He becomes a monster. And the town reacts accordingly. We move into May, and Texarkana basically becomes a fortress.
I mean, you read the reports from the time, hardware stores sold out of locks, deadbolts, window braces. You couldn't buy a gun or a box of ammo in a 100-mile radius. People were nailing their windows shut, not just locking them, nailing them.
And the town just shut down at night.
Businesses closed at dusk. The streets were empty. The phrase dreading sundown wasn't just a movie title. It was the absolute reality for thousands of people.
And the police were just completely overwhelmed. You have the Bowie County Sheriff on the Texas side, the Miller County Sheriff on the Arkansas side, the Arkansas State Police, the FBI gets involved. And then the Texas Rangers roll in.
And they send a legend, Captain Manuel Lone Wolf Gonzalez.
The man, the myth. Gonzalez is a fascinating figure. He looks like a Hollywood casting of a ranger. Tall, handsome, immaculate suits. He brings a certain swagger to the investigation.
He does.
But looking at the critiques from the time, was that swagger actually helpful?
It's a very mixed bag. He certainly brought national resources and media attention, but he was also accused of playing to the cameras. He loved the press, especially the female reporters.
So more show than substance.
Well, there are stories of him posing for photos, staging things rather than securing crime scenes. And his tactics were aggressive.
Aggressive how?
He recruited teenagers to act as beat.
Wait, what? He used actual high school kids as decoys?
He sanctioned it. Local officers would hide in the trunks of cars or lie on the floorboards, while these recruited teens would park in lovers' lanes, pretending to make out, trying to lure the Phantom in.
That seems insanely, unbelievably dangerous.
It was desperate. They were completely out of leads. They were trying to provoke a reaction. But the Phantom never took the bait. He was watching. He knew the lanes were flooded with cops.
So he changes the game, May 3rd.
This is the attack that threw the entire profile out the window. The victims were Virgil and Katie Starks.
And they aren't in a car. They aren't teenagers on a date.
No. They are a married couple in their mid-30s, sitting in their own isolated farmhouse.
This is why the terror escalated to a whole new level. The rule was, stay out of lovers' lanes and you're safe. The Starks murder proved that nowhere was safe, not even your own home.
The killer shoots Virgil right through a closed window while he's sitting in his armchair reading the newspaper.
It's practically a sniper attack.
Virgil dies almost instantly. Katie hears the glass shatter, sees the blood, and runs to the phone to call for help.
And he shoots her too.
Shoots her twice in the face as she's on the phone.
And she survives.
It's an absolute miracle of physiology and adrenaline. She's horribly wounded, but she manages to run out the back, bleeding profusely, and makes it to a neighbor's house for help. She lives.
But the ballistics don't match this time. That's the big twist here.
No! It wasn't the .32 caliber Colt. It was a .22 caliber semi-automatic.
So the police have to ask, is this the Phantom? Or is this a copycat settling some personal grudge?
The tire tracks found at the farmhouse were a match for tracks found near the earlier murder scenes. So the prevailing theory is that he adapted. The lovers' lanes were hot, so he changed his weapon and his hunting ground.
He left something behind this time, though. Something tangible.
A red flashlight. A cheap 2-cell flashlight painted red on the ends. But again, the same frustration. No fingerprints. Wiped clean.
This guy was operating with gloves or was just incredibly disciplined about wiping everything down?
He was disciplined, and he was smart.
Let's talk about the investigation's biggest hurdle. We mentioned the crowd control issues, but there's also the geography. Texarkana isn't just one city.
Right. It's two cities in two different states, Texas and Arkansas, and they're literally separated by a single street, State Line Avenue. In 1946, this was a bureaucratic nightmare.
If a crime happens on the Arkansas side, the Texas Rangers have no authority.
Zero. Correct. And they couldn't just radio across the line seamlessly. Warrants didn't transfer easily. Evidence sharing was a manual, slow process. The Phantom used this to his advantage. He could strike on one side of the street and flee to the other, crossing a jurisdictional line that the police couldn't cross as easily.
And then there's the profiling. They brought in a psychologist, Dr. Anthony LaPaula.
Which was, for the time, pretty cutting edge. Profiling wasn't really a standard police tool yet.
But when you look at LaPaula's conclusions, you see the prejudices of 1946, basically blinding the investigation.
Absolutely. LaPaula concluded the killer was a clever white man. And his reasoning was, well, it was based on pure racism.
What did he say?
His report explicitly states, Negro criminals are not that clever.
That's a direct quote from the official profile.
That is the quote. It reflects the deep, systemic racism of the era. And that bias likely caused investigators to dismiss or undervalue suspects who didn't fit that narrow prejudice mold.
And it might also explain why Mary Jean Laray's description of a black attacker was handled so awkwardly. It just didn't fit the clever criminal narrative they were building.
It threw a wrench in their entire theory.
So despite the Texas Rangers, the FBI, and all the decoys, the case goes completely cold. The attacks stop. But then a detective named Max Tockett starts looking at the data differently.
Tockett was an Arkansas State police officer, and he wasn't looking at the murders. He was looking at car thefts.
Why cars? What was the connection?
He noticed this really subtle temporal pattern. Right before each murder, a car was reported stolen in Texarkana. Then, after the murder, a previously stolen car was found abandoned somewhere else.
He was cycling through stolen vehicles for each attack.
It was genius in a dark way. If you drive your own car, someone might recognize it. If you steal a car just for the night of the crime, you are a ghost. Tockett was the first one to realize, we're not looking for a murderer, we're looking for a car thief.
And that leads them directly to Ewell Swinney.
Ewell Swinney, a career criminal, counterfeiter, burglar, and a notorious, very skilled car thief. In July 1946, months after the murder stopped, police arrest Swinney's wife, Peggy, when she goes to pick up a stolen car he had stashed.
And Peggy is the key that almost unlocks the whole thing.
She's everything. They separate her from you.
Yeah.
And Peggy, she talks. She gives a confession that is incredibly detailed. She says Ewell is the Phantom.
A full confession.
She explicitly confesses that he killed Paul Martin and Betty Jo Booker. She gives them details that only the killer, or someone with the killer, could possibly know.
Wow. Okay, so did she have proof?
She leads them to the woods where the car from that murder was abandoned. Police search the area and find a woman's heel print in the mud. They test it against Peggy's shoe. It's a perfect match.
That puts her at the scene, or at least at the car dump site.
It places her there. Then they search Swinney's belongings. They find a work shirt. Under a black light, they find a faint laundry mark. It spells out S-T-A-R-K.
Starks, like Virgil and Katie Stark.
And then in the shirt pocket, they find traces of welding slag. Virgil Starks was a welder who worked at a local supply company.
Okay, hold on. This is overwhelming. You have the wife's confession. You have her footprint at a body dump site.
Yeah.
You have the victim's shirt in the suspect's possession.
Yeah.
You have the established car theft pattern. In 2024, this is a slam dunk case. Why was he never charged with murder?
Because of a very specific and now mostly defunct quirk in Texas law called spousal privilege.
Explain that for us.
At the time, a wife could not be compelled to testify against her husband in a criminal court. She could choose to, but she couldn't be forced. The prosecutors built their entire murder case on Peggy's testimony.
And she changed her mind.
She stopped cooperating. We don't know if she was threatened by Swinney's family or if she just got scared, but she refused to take the stand.
So her confession.
Without her voice in court, her confession was legally considered hearsay. It was inadmissible. It couldn't be used.
What about the physical evidence? The shirt, the slag.
Purely circumstantial without her testimony. The defense could argue he bought the shirt at a secondhand store or found it. Without Peggy connecting the dots, the DA was terrified of double jeopardy.
If they try him for murder and lose, he walks away a free man forever.
Exactly. So they made a strategic calculation. They couldn't get him for murder, so they'd get him for what they could prove. They charged him as a habitual offender for the car thefts.
They got him on Al Capone charges. Tax evasion, basically.
Essentially. But the sentence was very telling. They gave him life in prison.
Life. For stealing cars.
Unheard of. But everyone in that courtroom knew what the sentence was really for. And Swinney knew it too. When he was first arrested, one of the first things he asked the officers was, "Will they give me the chair?"
You don't get the electric chair for Grand Theft Auto.
He knew exactly why they were there. He knew they were looking at him for the murders.
And the most damning piece of evidence isn't in the file. It's what happened next. Or rather, what didn't happen.
The murders stopped. You lock up Ewell Swinney, and the Phantom vanishes forever.
Swinney eventually got out, didn't he? After all that.
He did. In 1973, he won an appeal based on a legal technicality regarding a lack of proper counsel in a previous conviction that had branded him a habitual offender. He was released.
That must have been absolutely terrifying for the town of Texarkana.
By then, he was an old, broken man. He died in 1994 at a nursing home in Dallas. He never confessed. He took the secrets to the grave with him.
I want to touch on the alternative theories briefly because the internet loves to solve cold cases. The name Zodiac comes up a lot in forums.
It does, and you can see why. If you look at the Zodiac killer in California in the late 60s, the MO is strikingly similar.
Right.
Attacks on couples in isolated areas. A hooded costume, at least in the Lake Berryessa attack. The taunting of police, though the Phantom never wrote letters to the press.
Is there any real credible link?
Not really. Swinney was in prison during the Zodiac's prime years, so he obviously wasn't the Zodiac. Could the Zodiac have been inspired by the Texarkana case? It's possible. The Phantom case was national news. It kind of set the template for the Lover's Lane killer archetype in America.
That template was really solidified by the movie, wasn't it? The town that dreaded sundown.
Released in 1976. It's a fascinating cultural artifact. It's not a documentary, it's a horror film. It took the messy, confusing reality of the case and turned it into a straightforward slasher myth.
The trombone murder being the prime example.
Exactly.
And the town of Texarkana. They have a weird relationship with this movie and with their own history.
It's almost a ritual now. Every year around Halloween, they screen the movie outdoors in the public parks.
Wait, in the parks, where people might have been attacked.
Near some of the sites, yes. It's a way of reclaiming the fear, I suppose. Or maybe commodifying it. It turns a civic tragedy into local folklore.
It's just strange to think about sitting on a blanket in the dark, watching a movie about a killer who hunted people sitting on blankets in the dark in the same town.
It speaks to how time dilutes horror into legend.
So as we wrap this up, I want to go back to the central question. Why is this case still officially open?
Officially, it's open because there was no murder conviction. But if you talk to the descendants of the investigators who lived it, Max Tackett, Sheriff Bill Presley, for them, it was solved. They knew it was Swinney.
So it was the legal system that failed, not the detectives.
It was a perfect storm of failure. The lack of DNA technology prevented them from linking the physical evidence definitively. The spousal privilege law silenced their star witness. The jurisdictional chaos allowed him to maneuver and escape early on.
It feels like the Phantom had an incredible amount of luck.
He did. The rain washing away the tracks at the second crime scene, just blind luck. The crowd trampling that same scene. Luck again.
If we had today's tech back then,
Yeah.
what would have happened?
Oh, it's not even a question. If we had DNA, that work shirt with the welding slag and the Stark laundry mark, we'd have a DNA match to Virgil Snarks in 24 hours. The sexual assault evidence from the first attack, we'd match it to Swinney. It would be an open and shut case conviction in a week.
But because we didn't have that, we're left with a ghost story.
And a town that I think still looks over its shoulder a little bit when the sun goes down.
That's it for this deep dive. It's a reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't the ones under the bed. They're the ones who slip right through the cracks of the system.
Sleep well, everyone.
See you next time.